Okay, we're going to be coming up in just for 15 seconds. Just relax.
Coming up in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this shortened edition of Mind and Body. The ball game is coming up shortly, so let's get right into things with our special guest, the lovely actress, Barbara Jenkins. Barbara, welcome.
Thank you.
Barbara, I'm sure most of our audience is familiar with you because of your numerous television roles as well as commercials. And I think that most people who are looking here may be surprised or at least notice a big change. That familiar face is a lot thinner than we're used to seeing. So the subject of today's show will be something that most people talk about. I think it's the most talked about subject in the country next to taxes, and that's dieting. Welcome, Barbara Jenkins.
Thank you, Alan. It's nice to be here.
Now, up until recently, we've known you as the cheerful, rather chubby woman who...
Let's be honest about it, Alan. I was fat.
Okay, fat.
And don't be embarrassed about saying it. That's what I was. A fatty. Fat, fat, fat.
Well, I guess most of us try not to use the word out of kindness to anyone who's...
Fat.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you'd rather not say it. You'd rather say stout or portly or a little overweight.
Or maybe mature.
Well, that's one of the major problems facing anyone who's fat. Getting yourself to admit that you are fat, whether it's a few pounds or a few hundred pounds. Admitting it is something that takes a lot of courage for most people. As you said, I made a career out of being the cheerful fatty for a long time. Most of that time, I had myself convinced that I really was cheerful and happy.
Well, you certainly fooled us, Barbara.
Well, I'm an actress, remember.
Yes, and an exceptionally good one, too. Now, what was it that really turned you around?
Well, it was a combination of things, but in my case, I think vanity was the main reason in the beginning. You know, I wouldn't even undress in front of a mirror, even in the dark.
Oh, boy.
And did you ever see me where I wasn't completely covered up?
No, this is the first time. We've never...
That...
No, I don't think so.
Well, it was in my contract that I never had to expose anything more than my face, my hands, and the bottoms of my feet.
Oh, boy.
I've got a great agent.
You know, I really didn't think of you as being fat, though.
Well, a lot of people say that. But it's how you see yourself that's what counts, not how others see you.
That's right. You know, there are other considerations, perhaps health, that could have been part of your decision to lose weight as well.
Well, they did become important after I seriously started to diet. You know, after a few sessions with my doctor.
What do you mean, seriously started to diet? How much weight did you lose, Barbara?
Well, I'd been off and on diets of all kinds for years. Mostly the ones that promised fast weight loss with no effort.
Oh, you mean those so-called miracle diets?
Oh, right. I was a sucker for any magazine article or ad or well-meaning friend who had a new secret way to get thin. Oh, the problem, of course, is that none of them had a secret way to stay thin.
Of course.
And over the past 10 years or so, I've probably lost about 600 or 700 pounds. Mostly water.
Well, let's, since our time is limited, Barbara, let's get down to the meat and potatoes, pun intended, of dieting. Would you say so much emphasis is placed on losing weight today because we finally realized as a society that being overweight isn't good for your health?
I'd say that modern medicine has been able to pinpoint the dangers of obesity. But the benefits of being slender aren't something we just discovered in the 20th century.
Oh, yes. What was it you mentioned earlier about Hippocrates?
Hippocrates said that the very obese die sooner than the very slender. And he lived about 400 BC.
You come to think of it, if you look at the Greek and Roman statuary, they're all perfect specimens.
Oh, there are periods of history where being obese was a sign of prosperity. And even today there are cultures where being fat means success.
Oh, yeah.
But we're talking about just our culture in the United States. And with more than 50 million Americans lugging around excess baggage, well, that's a lot of potential health problems.
You know, you keep using the word obese. I generally think of an obese person as one grossly overweight. You know, those people who can't find clothes to fit them. But I don't think that's what you mean, is it?
No, obesity is used in this case when you mean being from 5 to 25% over the ideal body weight.
where does this ideal weight come from?
Well, weight tables insurance companies use have established certain standards,
Mm-hmm.
and obesity describes an excess of body fat. But it really isn't important whether you use overweight or obese. They're interchangeable.
Okay, so if a person weighed, say, 150 pounds and gained only 7.5 pounds, by definition, they'd be considered obese.
Right. They'd have the excess body fat.
Okay, let's talk about the dangers of being overweight now. Of course, we're all aware of the strain carrying those extra pounds around puts on the heart.
Right. The heart has to work harder to pump blood through all that surplus fatty tissue.
It's kind of like a car that's loaded beyond its capacity. After a while, the engine stops functioning efficiently.
Or it just breaks down and stops.
You mean a heart attack.
Right. And there's also a connection between obesity and hypertension, which causes high blood pressure, and that's more strain on the entire cardiovascular system.
Okay, now, let's back up a second. You didn't have any health problems when you went to your doctor, did you?
Oh, no, fortunately, I was in good shape. Just lucky, I guess.
Right. Well, then weren't you aware of some of these problems connected with being fat before?
Vaguely. But I kept my head in the clouds and my mouth in the refrigerator. When I finally got up the nerve to go talk to my physician, which, by the way, everyone should do before going on a diet. Anyway, when he started telling me about the possible long-term effects of being fat, well, vanity went right out the window. And I mean, when I left there, I was scared.
You mean your doctor frightened you into losing weight?
Oh, no. He was very kind and sympathetic. He just gave me the facts and figures and let me draw my own conclusions.
I guess you just can't twist somebody's arm to make them lose weight. It's something you really have to make a conscious decision about.
That's right.
So what are some of the other problem areas, then, about being fat?
Well, there's osteoarthritis. Oh, that's a very debilitating form of arthritis. Strain on joints that bear body weight, like hips and knees, can cause osteoarthritis, or make it worse if it's already present.
So excess weight, then, increases the strain.
Exactly. And some of the other diseases that go along with obesity are coronary artery disease, strokes, pulmonary disease.
Breathing problems?
Yes. And kidney and liver diseases, hormonal imbalance, gallbladder trouble, and non-insulin dependent diabetics are also related to obesity.
You know, to think that a gooey pizza or a gorgeous German chocolate cake can do all that to you, huh?
Oh, well, one pizza or one chocolate cake isn't the problem, of course, Alan. It's the eating habits over a period of years.
That makes me feel a little better. Anyway, breaking an old habit is really the big difficulty in dieting then, I suppose. You get so used to eating one way that when it comes to the change, well, it just isn't comfortable.
Right. Oh, and there's one other thing I'd like to mention before we go on, and that's that your diet can affect you more than just having to do with your weight. Research is finding that there's a relationship between what you eat and what diseases you contract, even if you're not overweight.
Oh, yes. I read something recently about diet connected to cancer.
The National Academy of Sciences has a lot of studies which indicate that diet may be responsible for most of the cancer in men and women today.
That old cliche, you are what you eat, well, I guess someone was right, perhaps.
Oh, it seems to be more and more true the more we learn about what we put into our bodies.
And speaking of that, isn't too much food the main reason for being overweight?
Well, it's certainly a big factor, Alan. Food is fuel. And if you eat more than your body needs, then the body stores it for a rainy day in the form of fat.
And of course, it never rains. The fat just it hangs around. And
Right. Around your stomach and around your thighs and arms and your face.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the other things that may influence your body weight then?
Physical activity is an important one. The more active you are, the more fuel you burn up. And your body type and size has a lot to do with it. Oh, a big lumberjack weighing 200 pounds would obviously have to eat more than a 5-foot, 110-pound woman who works in an office.
Well, thank goodness for me, yes. So, but again, like a car, then you take a 2-ton, 8-cylinder car, it will burn more gas than a 1,500-pound 4-cylinder compact, right?
Sure, except that a lot of 4-cylinder people eat like they were feeding a garage full of garbage trucks. Now, metabolism is the process your body uses to digest the food and to store the fat. The higher your metabolic rate, the faster you burn the food and fat.
Isn't the metabolic rate related to your age, your sex, or your physical activity?
Oh, yes. See, women tend to have a higher rate than men. The rate decreases as you get older, and of course physical activity increases the metabolic rate.
You know, I've seen some of those miracle diets that claim the body makes a distinction between different types of calories depending upon what kind of food is eaten. Now, what about that?
Well, for the most part, the body doesn't know the difference if a calorie comes from scrambled eggs or a cream puff when it comes to putting on weight.
That's too bad. I kind of like to believe that. Oh, well, I see it's time for a commercial break now, so can you give us something to think about until we come back?
Sure. The guiding principle to losing weight is very simple. If you eat more calories than you burn up, you gain weight. If you eat fewer calories than you burn up, you lose weight.
Then why is it so doggone hard? Well, look, when we come right back, we'll talk about miracle and fad diets, sensible dieting, and the 3 classifications of obesity. Now, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay. St. Paul. Thank you. Very well. We have a few minutes here, Barbara, and I thought you might like some coffee or tea.
Yeah, we got a problem with camera 1. We're going to stop for a few minutes until we get a replacement in, okay?
Okay, Fred, good. That gives us a chance to have a coffee break. Okay, coffee or tea?
Oh, a little herb tea?
Oh, terrific. Some chamomile?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, some coffee for me.
All right, this is delicious.
You know, you've certainly opened our eyes to a lot of things about being fat. You know, the psychological aspects of dieting never really occurred to me.
Well, it takes a lot of time to put on those extra pounds. When you have to shift gears mentally and physically to lose them, well, it can be difficult.
But not impossible.
No, but what you have to do is not to have great expectations that being thin is suddenly going to change your life into a paradise.
You know, that's interesting because I've known overweight people who were happy as clams when they first lost the weight. But after a while, they get depressed and go right back into the old feed bag.
I know. What's happened in the past couple of decades is that between the media and society, being thin is equated with being happy, and of course, that simply isn't true.
Yep, one of the most unhappy guys I know is thin and couldn't gain a pound if his life depended on it. But he's so miserable and depressed all the time that it's hard to be around him.
Yeah. Part of the problem is that everybody carries on about how great it is to be thin, but nobody mentions the joys of eating anything in sight in order to sustain being fat.
Pigging out is one of the great pleasures in life for some of us sometimes.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret, Alan, since we're not on the air. I still miss not going to the fridge in the middle of the night and finishing the leftovers or making some yucky mess of ice cream and syrup and nuts.
That kind of eating is like a security blanket, I guess.
Exactly. Food's never going to reject you. It's always there for the taking.
But getting back to the psychological aspects of obesity, when you take the food away from someone, there's probably a sense of loss or emptiness they've got to fill once they're down to their normal weight.
Right. And that's where the trouble can start. Well, look at it this way, Alan. In a fat person, my former self included, their subconscious can equate being thin with giving up being alive and vital and living life with great abandonment.
So the party's over if they get skinny, huh?
Yeah, you can look at it that way. They want what being thin means as far as society is concerned. Well, whether that's a real thing or not. But personally, being thin can be very threatening. Having to give up that freewheeling way of eating, that security blanket.
You know, you mentioned something before the show today, Barbara, we better be back on the set, okay?
That was very good.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the show.
Thanks for the hot tea.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Very
Ah. Yes. It's very refreshing sometimes. Okay.
How's that?
Good. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You do this very well.
Give me 10 seconds.
Uh-oh.
9,
Okay.
8,
Here we go.
7,
Ready?
6.
Welcome back to the second half of Mind and Body with my guest, Barbara Jenkins. Now, Barbara, you mentioned before about 3 kinds of obesity. I always thought that fat was, well, fat.
Well, it is, Alan, but here's what I mean. Before someone can be treated, in this case, someone who's overweight, you have to understand that the physical cause of the excess poundage.
You mean it's not necessarily all due to overeating?
The majority of the cases are because of the overeating. And those are the ones that we're talking about today, where the cure is simply to take in less food.
Good, good. But just for a moment, what could the other causes of obesity be?
Well, the second type of obesity is called endocrine obesity. And that means that the person has adrenal tumors or enlargement of the adrenal glands.
How does this affect weight gain?
Well, for some reason, people with the adrenal problem seem to absorb nourishment more quickly than most, and their weight increases on a very small amount of food.
You know, it must be very discouraging for those people to go on diets.
It can be. And unfortunately, they're usually addicted to the same types of things that make them gain the weight, the starches and the fats and the sugars.
Puts them between a rock and a hard place, right? And the third type?
Well, the third type is called toxic obesity. Overweight in this case is due to water and mucus retention in the lymphatic channels of the body.
What exactly is it that causes the retention then?
It's an allergy. See, what happens is this. The person is allergic to something. Oh, it could be fats or starches, chocolate, protein, or spices, or a lot of other things.
Okay, but how does this cause the retention?
Well, the liver and the kidneys are affected by whatever it is they're allergic to, and the poisons are sidetracked into the lymph tissues.
You know, I have that kind of reaction whenever I eat anything with garlic in it, no matter how little. You think perhaps I'm allergic to garlic?
I really don't know, Alan, but that's something you should check with your doctor. It certainly sounds like it's possible.
I guess anyone with the adrenal or toxic problem should then talk to their doctor, too.
Oh,
right?
that's right. Diagnosing your own condition can be very dangerous.
By the way, I meant to ask you earlier, are you one of those former fatties who's not happy with being thin?
Oh, I just love it, Alan. And I don't mean that just being thin made me happy all by itself. But I will tell you something. Thin makes it a lot easier to be happy when you can go into a store, pick out your size, and take it home without even trying it on because you know it's going to fit. Oh, the first time I did that, it was heaven.
I'll bet it was. So you'll be doing some bathing parts for us soon.
Oh, I hope so.
Great. As they say, if you've got it, flaunt it.
Well, I had too much to flaunt it before. Alan, while we're talking about this part of dieting, how someone looks, I'd like to go back to the social pressures we mentioned a few minutes ago.
Sure, it's your show.
You know, the medical pressures about being thin really don't have as much force on people as we think. Well, except maybe with somebody who's had an experience that threatened their life because of obesity.
You believe that the social pressures are greater then?
I really do. For instance, look at the heroes and heroines in movies and television. They're all slender, and fat people are generally cast as the villains or the comics.
You're right. So the role model would be the slender male or female leads. I mean, who would want to be thought of as a bad guy or a fat buffoon?
Yeah, that's it. And then there are the fashion models, especially the women. Now, the models are looked at as sort of a standard, but most women would find it impossible to stay as skinny as a fashion model, no matter how hard they tried.
Yeah, a lot of them look like, well, skeletons. Not very appealing to me.
Well, they do look good on camera to show off the clothes, but a lot of them really abuse their bodies nutritionally just to stay that way. An interesting thing has happened in the past couple of decades. Young adult women have actually started growing a little heavier, but the skinny ideal of models and actresses and so on has stayed the same. So since this pressure to lose weight from all sides, diets and diet books have skyrocketed into the public's attention.
And millions of women go on the diets and buy the books and spend millions of dollars trying to look like what they think they should.
That's right. Just one statistic, though, will point out what I mean. From 1958 to 1978, the number of diet articles has increased 73%.
Now, what about all those breakthrough diet books I see advertised? It seems to me that if some sort of diet really was a breakthrough or a miracle, there wouldn't be a dozen more on the market right after it.
Well, that's the point. Just when somebody who's dieting is about to say, forget it with the old diet, a new one comes along and they do it all over again. buying the book, giving it a try.
Well, why do you suppose it is that people keep after that ideal look? Does it have a lot to do with the medical reasons for being thin?
Well, I'd say no. You know, for most people, I think health benefits are secondary. They just want to be attractive.
To the opposite sex.
Well, that's a lot of it, of course, but being physically attractive is socially a good thing. It's the first impression that counts for a lot of people in our society, and it sort of gives you an advantage in a lot of situations.
But a good-looking, slender figure doesn't necessarily mean that there's a great personality to go along with it.
Of course not. But most people make judgments based on the physical appearance. You know, they equate the positive things in one area with the positive things in the other areas.
So being thin is sort of like putting honey out to catch the bear, like bait.
Well, I don't mean to say that it's the only reason, Alan, but, you know, it certainly has a lot to do with what's going on in our world today.
Hopefully more and more people will realize that being at their normal weight is good for more than just looking great in public or attracting the opposite sex.
That would be marvelous, and I think it's going that way.
I've just been notified by our distinguished floor manager that we've got to move along. So let's talk for a little bit about the miracle and fad diets we mentioned. As you said, you had some experience with them?
Oh, yes. Pills, creams, tablets, liquids, starch blockers, oh, you name it. I've tried it.
You're talking about those over-the-counter sort of things then, right?
Yes, and a matter of fact, oh, I just got an ad for another medical breakthrough just before I left the studio today.
This would come under the same category, I suppose, except that you can buy it only through the mail.
Yes, which probably means it hasn't been tested.
Let's see. Doctor's Breakthrough. Weight loss without dieting. Bypasses dieting and attacks fat directly. Never diet again. Cure for fat. All sounds too good to be true.
It is too good to be true.
What about this letter from a doctor?
We'll read the fine print. See, he's a PhD, not an MD.
And he also cops out by saying that although the jury is still out on this particular substance, it could be something that changes people's lives without actually dieting. That's pretty weak support to me.
And pretty dangerous support.
What about those over-the-counter diet aids? Have they been approved by the FDA?
Let's talk about that. You know, there is one drug, PPA, that the Food and Drug Administration has approved as an appetite suppressant. But it was originally approved for use as a nasal decongestant.
Well, that's really bizarre.
Well, the FDA has requested more evidence before it reaches a final conclusion. But in the meantime, PPA is being used in the majority of weight control substances.
I've heard about side effects from some of these diet aids.
PPA can cause hypertension, high blood pressure, even in young, healthy adults when it's, you know, used within the recommended dosage. And the FDA admits that PPA can be hazardous to at least 20% of the population.
20%? Is hypertension the only side effect?
No. There have been reports of anxiety, dizziness, hallucinations, accelerated pulse rate, restlessness and agitation, all while using the recommended dosage.
In fact, I've heard that they use caffeine in a lot of these products as well.
Yes, and caffeine can just make the reactions worse.
I'm almost afraid to ask, but what other drugs do these diet aids use?
Benzocaine is another one.
But benzocaine is an anesthetic. Now, what good can it be for losing weight?
Well, it's used in chewing gum, those lozenges, you know, the candy-type reducing products. What it does is to numb the taste buds just before you eat, and that's supposed to lessen the desire for food.
It's supposed to. Does it work at all?
Well, the numbing sensation doesn't last long enough to really make a difference in appetite control. Besides, appetite control is a small part of a weight control plan.
Small? How do you mean?
Well, overeating has more to do with appearance and the role of food than it does, you know, with the appetite.
I see. Do you have any other scary tidbits to give us before we move on?
Well, I don't mean to scare anybody. I just want to make them aware of what's going on in the diet world. I mean, there's a drug called aspartame, which is fairly new. A doctor's board of inquiry recommended that no products containing aspartame be marketed until its association with brain cancer could be resolved. But the FDA overruled their opinion, so products containing aspartame are available now, or will be in a short time.
To help you lose weight?
That's what they tell us.
I can just about hear the groan of the crowd in the ballpark there. So we'd better move on to another part of our topic. The fad diets that seem to be everywhere these days.
Well, fad diets have been around for a long time, Alan. It's just that they're much more publicized these days. One quick weight loss diet that was popular in the 1920s was the vinegar diet.
Yuck! What good does drinking vinegar do? And who the heck would use a diet like that?
Well, it doesn't do any good. But it does cause weight loss by overstimulating the thyroid and the adrenal glands. And as for who would use it, well, where are most diet ads and books and fad diets aimed?
Towards women.
Right. The vinegar diet makes you lose weight, but it also can cause tuberculosis and a number of less dangerous side effects.
Ah, vanity thy name is, human beings. Now, what else was used in the old days to lose weight quickly then?
Oil diets were popular in the 20s and the 30s, and there's still some diets today based on using oils of some kind.
Mm-hmm. 30 weight or higher, I'll bet. It makes the food just kind of slip away, huh?
Well, I can't give you the scientific reasons why you'd lose weight on an oil diet, but drinking lots of oil is dangerous. Even a neutral one like mineral oil.
And what about those combination type diets? You know, bananas and skimmed milk, lamb chops and pineapple, that sort of thing.
Any of the combination or pairs diets are not only boring, they're dangerous because they cause vitamin and mineral deficiency disorders. And don't forget the one food diets like the rice or potato or ice cream diets.
The combination or single food diets are the eat-all-you-want diets, aren't they?
Yes, but feeling full doesn't mean you're getting all the nutrition you need.
And what about the low-carbohydrate diets? They've been very, very big in the past few years.
Well, restricting carbohydrates and eating all the protein and fat you want is just another dangerous way to lose weight. There's a quick water weight loss, but heavy protein intake is a strain on the kidneys, and there are a lot of other side effects, too. Oh.
You need any help there?
Oh, no. See, there's a quote about low carbohydrates that I wanted to give you, but I just can't remember it word for word, so pardon me while I read it.
Sure. Sure.
The American Medical Association Council on Foods and Nutrition did an evaluation of the low-carbohydrate diets, and this was their conclusion. If such diets are truly successful, then why do they fade into obscurity within a relatively short period, only to be resurrected some years later in slightly different guise? Moreover, despite the claims of universal and painless success for such diets, no nationwide decrease in obesity has been reported.
Well, that seems to take care of that. Then there were the liquid protein diets a short while back. They also proved to be dangerous, didn't they?
Absolutely. Low-calorie, long-term protein diets caused a number of deaths in this country, at least 50 that we know of, and 12 of these were women under a doctor's care. These women who had no previous health problems other than just being overweight.
And that brings us to fasting. Those low-calorie, high-protein diets are kind of like a modified fast, aren't they?
Yes, fasting is nothing new, of course. It's mentioned in the Bible dozens of times, and Hippocrates and Mark Twain both practiced limited fasting.
Mark Twain, what an incredible guy. That guy.
A lot of dieters eventually are forced to the conclusion that only way to lose weight is a drastic reduction in calories. And a lot of them experiment with fasting.
But shouldn't that be done only under strict supervision?
Oh, yes, it's always best to get expert advice before going on a fast, even for a day or two. Fasting does have its benefits, but it can be dangerous if it's not done properly.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here, Barbara. So what about a few words for sensible diets, if there are any?
Oh, yes, they're sensible diets. But first of all, you have to realize that there aren't any miracles when it comes to taking off weight.
Again, you're talking about those people who are just overeaters and not the ones with physiological malfunctions, of course.
That's right, that's right. Look, the public has never been too thrilled about curtailing their eating habits just to lose weight. So it's really an uphill battle for most people. What you've really got to do is simply eat less. Exercise more, or both.
So exercise is important then?
Oh, sure. It burns up the calories. And by the way, calories do count. So no matter what anybody says, exercising regularly increases your metabolic rate.
Do you have some sort of simple way to start?
Well, look, a pound of fat represents about 3,500 calories. So if you set up a goal of reducing your caloric intake by 3,500 calories a week, you'll lose a pound a week, more or less.
Okay, so 7 into 3,500?
5 times.
Oh, okay. So if you reduce your intake by 500 calories a day,
Or let's say 400 calories a day, then increase your physical activity to burn up the other 100, there's the 3,500 a week.
now, is this a guaranteed 1 pounder a week weight loss?
No, Alan, nothing's guaranteed. Losing weight isn't a smooth, constant process. Usually you lose more in the first week, though, partly because you're getting rid of a lot of water, too.
So you might lose a few pounds and then level off for a while.
Yes, And as I said, there aren't any miracles in losing weight, but a safe and sane approach is the only way to take it off and keep it off. And don't forget that a moderate increase in your physical activity can really be helpful in losing those extra pounds.
What you seem to be talking about here is a diet that a person could live with for a long time, not just until the weight is off.
That's about it. See, everyone's body responds differently, so the diet has to be adjusted to your own metabolism, your body type, and so on. Just because your friend lost a ton on a certain diet doesn't mean you can do it too.
Don't you think that a lot of people who go on diets neglect to look out for proper nutrition? I mean, they're so obsessed with losing the weight that they overlook the fact that they have to be having nutrition in mind as well as those low-calorie meals.
Oh, that happens a lot. You lose weight, but your friends tell you you look terrible. Make sure the diet is balanced for good nutrition.
You know, we're just about out of time, Barbara. So can you sort of sum up some ideas about sensible dieting for us?
I think so. First, losing weight isn't easy, so you've got to be prepared to put out some effort.
Sort of anything worthwhile is worth fighting for,
That's it. The next, the rewards of dieting aren't necessarily immediate. 1 or 2 pounds a week might take a while to show up on someone who's mildly or greatly obese. And don't feel you have to do it alone. Get some help from somebody around you at home or at work.
How about avoiding hunger pangs?
You can do that with a moderate reduction in your intake and maybe by increasing the frequency of meals. Now, this point is very important. Be sure to adapt your weight loss program to fit your individual needs. There are a lot of variations on dieting, so you have to find the one that suits you best.
Time for one more point, Barbara.
Okay. Remember that losing weight and keeping it off isn't a short-term thing. You have to modify your eating and your exercise habits for the rest of your life. But considering the benefits of good health, it really isn't too much to ask of yourself.
Barbara, thank you for being here and giving us so much information on dieting. I really wish we had more time, but they're about to throw the first pitch. So join us again next time when we'll have some more interesting guests and personalities.
Oh, Alan, wait. I'd like to close with a little poem by Walter de la Mare.
If it isn't longer than 10 seconds.
It's a very odd thing, as odd as can be. Whatever Miss T eats turns into Miss T.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.